You likely clicked on this video expecting me to uncover some sort of mysterious Ponzi scheme lurking in the depths of the current financial market. But this video is far from that. Today's topic isn't about Michael Burry, Peter Schiff, the markets, or stocks. Today's video is about something much more important. The story begins with this man, Peter Schiff. Schiff over the years has become known as Dr. Doom, criticized over and over again for being a perma-bear, writing book after book about an incoming financial collapse that has failed to materialize. But beyond the criticism lays something deeper that is often overlooked and dismissed as a conspiracy theory, something that is universally accepted as bat crazy by all respected, rational, and successful finance gurus. It's this very thing that this video re-examines from a different lens, producing evidence of a massive Ponzi scheme that once exposed would result in the collapse of the world's banking system. Now, before you click off the video and dismiss me as a conspiracy nut or wacko, please give me a chance to explain myself. This is not your typical tinfoil argument, and it's not a video that is intended to convince you to sell all your stocks, buy gold, and hunker down in a bunker waiting for doom. Instead, it's a realistic look at the modern financial system, one that you likely have never been exposed to, something YouTube's top finance figures will never show you. The argument is very simple. We are currently living in a country that is running history's largest Ponzi scheme, and we, the citizens of the United States, are the victims of an unfortunate system that is set up to fail. Now let's go back to Peter for a second. This is a man who undoubtedly has some conflicts of interest when he speaks. For his entire career, he has indeed been pretty much bearish on the US markets, suggesting that the US dollar will crumble and gold will skyrocket. A theory that draws critics due to many reasons, but regardless of the specific facts, Peter just so happens to also run a precious metal business as well. This in turn has resulted in many people dismissing his core arguments and focusing on his conflicts of interest, the failures of his predictions, and the legacy of his father. Opinions like these are common, and they are echoed by major media outlets and leading personal finance figures like Dave Ramsey. Take a listen.
Sure, what's up?
My dad has gotten done reading this book called Crash Proof. I don't know if you're familiar with it, by Peter Schiff.
By who?
Peter Schiff?
No.
No. It's one that they've been talking about on talk radio a lot. Anyway, this guy has got my dad convinced that the stock market crash is imminent, and we need to pull our money he's pulling his out of his 401k, all his investments, and he's trying to invest in gold and I guess overseas. He's saying to do, euros because of the price of the dollar dropping and all that kind of stuff. My dad is sure that this is going to happen and is trying to convince us to do the same thing. I'm not educated enough. I've just started reading the book myself, and I'm wondering, I'm sure it'll be hard for you to discuss it if you're not familiar with the book, but I'm wondering what your opinion is on that.
I'll try to be nice.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely ludicrous.
Okay.
Absolutely ludicrous. Amanda, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Okay. I'm 47. And I have seen books come out like this every year, as long as I was old enough to read. And, the guy that wrote the book's Irwin Schiff's dad? Or he's Irwin Schiff's kid? Blake is telling me, oh my gosh.
I don't know. They've been talking about it on the Glenn Beck show. That's where my dad heard about it.
Unbelievable. Glenn put him on the air?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And he's recommending the book.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Irwin Schiff is a kook.
But if you for a second tune out the noise and listen to the facts he's spewing, you will start to see that many parts of his narrative cannot be dismissed. America is running a Ponzi scheme, and we can indeed prove it. If you think otherwise, you can drop a comment below. The framework behind this argument is centered around one big idea. As you may know, we, the US, are constantly borrowing money to fund our government expenses. This is called the national debt, a measurement that shows just how much the federal government owes its creditors. The entire concept of national debt can be confusing, but in simple terms is just how much we as a nation owe as a result of borrowing because we simply spend more than what we take in as taxes. Right now, that number stands at $28 trillion, which may mean nothing to you, but just know this. The US collects only $3.6 trillion in taxes every year. This is what the feds consider revenue. Using simple mathematics, you can see that our government will never ever repay those debts. It only has two options: inflation or default, and the second one will never happen. Take a listen to this infamous clip from 2013 where Peter Schiff talks about exactly this.
You know, dancing, it was just boom.
Well, no, well, it's not like we're going to pay our debt back. It's the same thing. Our government can't pay our debts either.
Well,
It's only a question of how we default. Do we do it legitimately or do we inflate? But our creditors aren't getting their money back. It's not even within the realm of possibility.
but we said that in the 90s too, and then you can't.
But we haven't paid anybody back. It's a
Well,
Ponzi scheme. No one gets paid back. We only pay people back when we borrow the money.
There was a time when we were paying it back. I mean, I remember writing.
When did the national debt ever go down?
Oh, it did.
When?
In the late 90s and 2000s.
No, it still went up. Every year of the Clinton surpluses, the national debt went up. It never went down. There wasn't a single year where we ended the year with less debt when we started. It was only a bookkeeping entry.
Well, if you're talking the deferred liabilities.
No, the actual, not even that. I mean, that's even bigger. I'm talking about the official national debt, which is the tip of a huge iceberg. But even that number, if you go back and look at it, every year it went up. So all we did is go deeper into debt. We never pay our bills. We're like Bernie Madoff, right? We run a giant Ponzi scheme.
So the equation is rather simple. It's right there in our face. America will never repay these debts. So when it sells bonds, which are essentially debt instruments, it's basically selling you a piece of paper that is part of a great Ponzi scheme. Right now, we sell bonds to pay off old bonds. The definition of a Ponzi scheme is stated as a form of fraud in which belief in the success of a non-existent enterprise is fostered by the payment of quick returns to the first investors from money invested by later investors. Does that sound familiar? If the government has to keep raising fresh loans to repay old ones, aren't its debt-raising programs similar to a Ponzi scheme? You could potentially make the argument that as long as the debt to GDP ratio is being reduced, this is no big deal. But even that argument holds no value in the US case. The debt to GDP ratio has only grown over the last 40 years, hitting what is very close to an all-time high in 2021. So I ask you, what is the difference? Is this not clear evidence that this entire system is a fraud, a sitting time bomb ready to explode? Take a listen to Warren Buffett explain national debt back in 1995 when the ratio read 66%. Remember, today it's around 125%.
If you were to look at the balance sheet of the United States of America, is the national debt as frightening as that it appears to be? And secondly, in terms of redeployment of capital, if Coca-Cola is such a wonderful investment, has returned so much, why not redeploy some capital in purchasing additional shares of Coca-Cola? And finally, thank you for letting Jane do that portrait of you. And if it's good, we'll do Mr. Munger next. Thank you.
First question about the U.S. balance sheet. The net national debt is about, it would be about 60-odd% of GDP.
Without counting unfunded pensions.
Yeah, but also with a claim on the income in effect of future citizens, which also was an asset too that you could set up. But that figure, I think at the end of World War II, may have been, I know it was around at least 125%, may have been 150% or so of GDP. So we have sustained, now the interest rate on that debt was much lower. A lot of it was at 2.9% because that's what savings bonds paid. But that level of debt, which I don't advocate in relation to GDP, turned out to be quite sustainable. And as a matter of fact, it drifted down year after year for a long time until the early 80s when it started rising again. And now it's actually fallen a little bit in the last few years, the ratio of debt to GDP. There are a lot of measurements of how much debt is too much and all of that. But probably, I think that if I had to look at one single statistic, I would look at at that ratio, just like I would look at a ratio of debt to income for an individual. Then you'd get into the question of the stability of the income and to whom it is owed. But I do not think that the level of debt relative to the economy is of anything that's of a frightening nature.
At the end of the day, there is a different side to this story. We can speak about the limits. At what point does the debt to GDP ratio cause problems? Based on that Warren clip, he would be worried right now. But no economist can tell you exactly because this is an unproven limit that has been pushed way past 125%. For an example, Japan, a country that you don't typically associate with being a failed state, has a debt to GDP ratio over 220%. That is pure insanity. Yet we are not seeing headlines like the ones we saw in Lebanon, Greece, or Venezuela. It may be the case that the US continues to chug along way past this point, and the limits that we previously thought to be dangerous are perfectly safe. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you want to enjoy more content like this. Also, if you're thinking about buying up some crypto and earning interest while holding it, consider signing up for BlockFi using my affiliate link in the description below.